Hey, it's Jim Dodson, the Florida Bike Guy, your bicycle injury and accident lawyer. So I'm here with Phil Pfaffili this morning. Phil is the owner of Pedalec, an electric bike shop in Punta Gorda. And I've been to Phil's shop. I've taken a ride on one of his fantastic e-bikes. And Phil has a world of information to share with us this morning. A lot of things I was frankly surprised to understand. And I have a totally new appreciation for e-bikes, having ridden one of Phil's bikes. And I think anybody who's ever thought about it should drop by and get a free test ride. But good morning, Phil.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, and good morning to everybody who is watching.
So you are from Switzerland?
Yes,
right?
sir, I am.
So how do you end up in Punta Gorda with an e-bike shop?
The short version is that I have relatives here, living here for more than 20 years. And on one of my holidays, I met my wife. So once I was back in Switzerland, I was really hard thinking about how I can make a living in the United States. And since e-biking is a hobby of mine for more than 10 years, I came up with a plan and applied for an investor's visa in the United States. And since I have some kind of roots in Punta Gorda, I opened the shop here, and that was 3 years ago, and we're still here.
So tell us where your shop's located and what are the products that you sell?
Well, our shop is located in Punta Gorda, downtown. It's actually kind of easy to find, but not. You can easily find the building where we're in. It's the big garage building where you can park your car for free. But then once you get out of the garage building, you have to come around the corner on US 41 northbound. That's where our entrance.
So when I went to your shop, my MapQuest takes me to Herald Court, but Herald Court is on the north side of the building, and you actually face 41. So when you take Herald Court, you need to park and just walk 20 feet around the corner, and there's Phil's shop actually facing 41. It's a little confusing when you look at your MapQuest.
It is, and I end up many times guiding people on the phone around the corner.
But your shop's a little different because you don't just sell bikes, you have other things. What else is going on in your shop?
Well, our shop is like 2 units. We have everything dedicated to electric pedal assist bikes. And then we also have a food corner, which comes in very handy. My wife is for 20 years into health food. She is running that shop. And we actually sell a lot of organic stuff and smoothies and sandwich that can refill your energy after a ride or something that you can take with you.
As a matter of fact, this morning we may hear your wife making a smoothie out in the front of the shop. Is that right?
Yeah, you can hear when she makes a smoothie, when that blender goes off.
All right, let's dive in a little bit about e-bikes. I know that Europe is really well ahead of the United States on the e-bike trend. You have a lot of brands that, quite frankly, a lot of Americans haven't heard of. I think over here, you walk into your standard bike shop, your Trek, your Specialized, Raleigh, you're going to see their version, their own e-bikes in there from what I experienced. But you sell brands that I wasn't familiar with when I walked into your shop. So tell us about the brands that you sell and why those brands that you have. And really, the fact that you have multiple brands makes you different than other bike shops, from my experience.
Yeah, right. I'd be glad to answer some questions that people might have out there about e-bikes, because there's not yet all the information out there. Some think it's a scooter, and others think it's just a bicycle, but it's something on its own. So to answer your question, why we have multiple brands is so we don't have to sell just what one brand offer. We actually can take care of the customer needs and what they want. So if you want an off-roader, if you want a city bike, if you want a cruiser, you can everything find in this shop. There's permanently about 30 different bikes on the floor that you can pick from and go on a free test ride. That's certainly one of the main differences to other shops.
Yeah, that's a big issue for when I was there. I mean, when you walk into most traditional bike shops these days, they will have a couple of e-bikes or 2 or 3 e-bikes. They're not going to have, in my experience, they're not having 30 on the floor. You know, so it's amazing to see.
Yeah, it's not that I invented that concept. It's in Switzerland. A friend of our family has his own bike shop, eBikes too, and so I spent a lot of time there before I came to the United States, and I learned from him that is to satisfy your customer, it's the best to have every kind of ride in your shop, and especially in a good quality, which satisfy your customers more than and you have less problems with these bikes.
Well, just on the quality issue, I know that the name of your shop is actually Pedalec SQB. Is that right?
SQB, yeah.
So tell us what that means.
Pedalec is actually an expression that was coined by the industry, which is like a fusion of 2 words, like pedal and electric. So I choose to pick that for my company name, but I wanted to add something distinctive to make clear this is a unique shop. So SQB, we came up with the meaning pretty early. It used to say Swiss quality bicycles. But down the road, we found out that only one big Swiss brand would actually serve the American market, and that's Stromer. So we had to think of something different. And since Swiss are about quality, we changed it to Swiss quality bound, which means we were looking out for other brands that make it up to Swiss quality and are maybe not Swiss, but the same quality.
Okay. So let's dive in a little bit about the bikes you sell. So what are the main lines that you handle in your shop?
Well, as a multi-brand shop, we have many lines, but the main lines are, let's say from the top is Stromer, Easy Motion, and Magnum. That's our 2 brands, which cover pretty much every kind of ride. But then let's say you're looking for a really nice cruiser or something unique, handmade or whatsoever. A regular manufacturer could not offer that. So we also have like the Ruffian, which is a handmade product from Germany, or we have the Rayvolt, which is another cruiser, and so on. So yeah, we even have tricycles.
Wow. Okay. So I didn't understand, frankly, when you start looking at e-bikes, there are really 2 different ways that the bike responds to the torque that you're applying to the pedals. Mm-hmm. From what you and I talked about in the past, you've got a cadence sensor, or you have what you call a smart sensor. And they're really 2 different methods for the bike to respond to what the pedalist is doing. So tell us about what the difference is and why those are unique.
Yeah, there are basically 2 kind of apply the power from the motor to your pedaling. The way that is easier to accomplish is the cadence sensor, which is basically a ring of magnets that is like on your crank, and on the other side there is a pickup on your frame, and as soon as the crank turns, the pickup will realize and the power will apply to your pedaling. This kind of sensor has usually a lot of levels. It's a little bit like a stick shift in a car, you know. If you want to go on different levels and have different power, you have to manually go up and down the power modes. Now, what I call smart compared to that is usually the torque sensor. A torque sensor may have levels as well, maybe only 3 levels, but every level acts like an automatic, which means there is no delay in applying power to your pedaling, but the moment you push the pedal, or if you adjust it a little bit more sensitive, the moment you put your foot on the pedal, the bike already knows you're there, and as soon as you push down, the power will apply, and the power will respond to your own effort. So that's usually the kind of sensor that you find on the bikes that, let's say, experienced bicyclists like that more, because it feels more like a bicycle.
Yeah, when I was in the shop, I see Lee is online. Morning there, Lee. When I was in your shop, I took a ride on one of your Stromers, and I was amazed at the feel of the bike. You know, it responded instantly to when you apply pressure to it. And I'll talk to you a little bit. I'll talk a little bit more about my experience, but I was riding a torque sensor.
Correct. Yeah.
And that was my experience. And I think from talking to you, generally the torque sensor is a little bit more expensive than the cadence sensor. So I think you're finding it on the higher end bikes than you're going to get a cadence sensor most likely on the lower end bikes. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Because the torque sensor is not as easy to build as a cadence sensor.
Okay.
It's very
so Charlie, my friend has a question to you. He wants to know what kind of bike you'd recommend for a 5-mile commute to work. Now, Charlie's in Virginia, so he's not going to deal with some of the heat we deal with, but he doesn't want to arrive at work melt as a sweaty mess.
Some hills, maybe.
He's got some hills to deal with, probably. But anybody, I think in general, anybody doing a 5-mile commute, what kind of bike would you recommend?
Well, for commuting, it should be a bike that has an easy setup. So it would be very responsive to your pedaling, because you don't want to get there and then be sweaty like on a regular bike. So if I look at it, maybe an Easy Motion or a Stromer, whereas the Stromer is a little bit more responsive, has some more high-end features, like you can lock up your bike with a cell phone and stuff like this. And some of them are also a little bit faster, so you can get as fast as you can from A to B without sweating.
Yeah, so, we rode the Stromer into the parking garage, and it was astonishing to me. You just float up the incline. It's amazing. And you're applying pressure, but it's an amazing experience.
You know, another amazing thing that you would not recognize in the first place is a Stromer has a recuperating system, which means if you have hills and use a lot of battery uphill and you go downhill and brake, the brake would regenerate power into the battery.
Okay, so which is that's a really big feature. You're not going to find that on a lower end bike.
No.
So I don't know. We can talk. Maybe now's the time to talk price, because I understand there's sort of a break off. You have the bikes that are like $2,000, $2,500, and then you have the different quality bike at the $300 to $4,400 range. Is that a fair kind of a breakdown?
Well, yeah, it goes a little bit lower with the price sometimes if we come across brands that really can perform at that price level. So there might be 1 or 2 bikes at our shop that you find starting with around $1,600, $1,700. And then on the upper end, there would be the latest model of Stromer that will be delivered just this or next week out into the American market, which is the ST5, and that's a $10,000 bike. So that's something like a carbon fiber road bike, just the electric bike version of it.
Okay. Well, the interesting thing about the Stromer, and in my experience, I mean, the Stromer weighs probably, 35 pounds, but the one that I rode.
Yeah, it is a little bit, if you ride it, it feels maybe like 30 pounds. But
well, I don't know. To me, it felt like riding my road it felt like riding my road bike. I mean, the weight sort of, to me, was not an issue when you have some power assist, because the weight becomes not an issue. It would be more of an issue if you were pedaling it without any power.
Exactly. If you have a nice setup like on a Stromer, I don't know, that bike could probably even way more heavier and you would not feel it, because the setup is so fine tuned that once you ride that bike, it feels like a way lighter bike.
No, it was like riding my road bike.
Exactly.
It's easier. So you gave me an example when we talked before about when you have the bike, it's like the Stromer, for instance, you can level different levels of power. And for instance, level one, you use the example, you might have your 30% of the effort is by the pedal and 70% by the motor. And then you could change that to 20%, 80%, 10%, 90%. So kind of explain that if you would.
Well, that more or less that applies to all the bikes. Whatever level you choose, you have a certain ratio between your own human power and the power of the motor. So yes, as an example, you might start on level 1 and having like 40% you or 60% you and 40% motor, and then you go on level 2 and you might have 50-50. So you can actually choose how much help you want or how much help you don't want.
Right. Okay.
So, and that is, I have to mention that right now, is a big misunderstanding that many people have that come into my shop, and I guess it's a common understanding that most people that never ride an e-bike before think you don't. There is no way to have your workout, but it's quite the contrary. You can actually adjust your workout on an e-bike just like you want it.
You can have as little power assist as you want, and you can work as hard as you choose. Is that fair? Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you switch off the power, you might have a very well workout.
I'm gonna talk to you in a little minute about like who buys them, but let's get a little information about the bikes out of the way. So what's the average distance a person could expect out of an e-bike today on a battery charge? And I know there's variabilities for weight and terrain and all that stuff, but give us some parameters.
Yes, every manufacturer would give you a range from 2. They don't give you an exact mileage.
Right.
So the most good quality e-bikes these days, they go between 30 and 40 miles before you have to recharge it. Whatsoever, again, if you go for the top-notch models, they can support you for more than 100 miles. So that's slightly different technology, different battery management systems, different setups. You might talk about the system that works like a Tesla car, technology-wise. Yeah.
Right.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say between 30 and 100 miles, everything is possible. It's looking it depends what you're looking for.
And so when you have to charge, how long does it take to recharge the battery?
There as well, these differences in technology and costs. If you look at an entry-level model, it might go, let's say, 30 miles. And if you recharge it, that's, I would call it, that's like one group of 2. If you recharge that kind of battery, even though you go 30 miles, it might recharge between 5 and 6 hours. If you go to the more highly efficient batteries and battery management systems, they usually have, let's call it a turbocharger. So even if you go like 100 miles on one charge, you can recharge it in 3.5 hours, right. Almost half the time. And this group 2 of charging systems would also, on most bikes today, give you a quick charge. Like you can go on 80% of the charge in only 2 hours if you're in a hurry. I'm not sure whether you can hear me still. On my side, your picture is frozen. Jim? I can't hear you, and I don't see a frozen. I only see a frozen picture right now. I wonder whether I can help to restart this whole thing here.
Live technology. Something happened with my computer. It cut off the signal. Phil's not able to pick me up right now. I think maybe we'll have to maybe continue this at a later time.
I just restarted here, and I can see you now. And
can you hear me?
Hear you? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't we? I think you were talking about. I'm not sure where we left off. So Jim is asking something.
Huh? Where was that? I was a little bit distracted.
I think we were talking about battery life. You know, yes. When someone considering buying an e-bike, how many years will they get out of the battery, and what does it cost to replace the battery, kind of typically of the course of the bike?
Yes, if you have a lithium-ion battery in a good quality, I've seen these batteries live up to 5 years. I've seen a battery on an A to B bike, which is close to the quality of an Easy Motion or a Stromer, that was 6 years old and still working. Of course, the capacity of the batteries will
down over time. Yeah,
go down. Yeah. So if you're a commuter that commutes every day, 60 miles, of course, the lifetime will be shorter. Now, to replace the battery is also, as usual, a matter of where you start with. You can have, or you can purchase a standard tower battery, something that takes you maybe 30 to 40 miles today, right on the internet or Amazon or wherever for maybe $300–400.
Okay.
And if you go for a bike like a Stromer ST5 that has a battery that takes you 110 miles, once you will want to replace that battery, it's probably more than $1,500.
Well, battery technology is going to get better and better every year, isn't it?
Exactly. I was just about to say that's if you take the prices from today, but observing the market the last 10 years, these batteries don't vary much in price over the years, but they have way more capacity. So when I bought like 3 years ago my Stromer ST2, it had a battery that could take you like 70 miles. For the same bike today, for the same price that I paid back then for the battery, you can have a bike that goes 100 miles.
Right.
So you get more for your money then.
So Jim, and we had a couple of people that have joined us in kind of midstream. And so this is Phil from Pedalec in Punta Gorda. He's on 31 North, downtown Punta Gorda. Pedalec is the name of the shop. And if you didn't see the beginning of our broadcast, Phil is unique in his shop because he has probably 30 bikes that you can choose from mountain bike to touring to road bike, whatever, even trikes. So he's probably got the biggest selection that I'm personally aware of e-bikes. And plus, Phil's Swiss and knows e-bikes because of the long culture of the electric bike industry and people using them in Europe much more than they are here. They're catching on here, but they're way ahead of us over there in terms of manufacturing and technology. So what kind of warranty do people expect when they get an e-bike, Phil? What is the kind of the industry norm?
Most manufacturers give you 1 year. If you go for a higher end bike, they give you 2 years. And you might expect some also some goodwill, you know, like if you have something after 2 years and 1 day, they're not as picky and say, oh, your warranty is up. And,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I don't want to miss to mention one company. It's also one of my main brands, Easy Motion. What they do is they give you 5 years warranty, but that's exceptional in the industry.
So if someone's looking at an e-bike and they walk into a bike shop like yours and that you have a bike that's $2,000 and you've got a bike that's $4,000, I know you typically, in my view, you never get more than you pay for. So what are the trade-off between the $2,000 e-bike and the $4,000 e-bike as an example?
Let's start with the feeling that you have when you ride the bike. The $2,000 bike might, simply said, feel more like a scooter, and the $4,000 bike will absolutely feel like a pedal bike, a regular bike, just as you experienced on your own test ride. And then everything comes down to the components. It's always what components you take to put together a bike, and of course also the experience and the management of the electric part on these e-bikes. So yes, you might have the same technical specs on a battery on a $2,000 bike like on the $4,000 bike, but the $4,000 bike will take you 70 miles and the $2,000 bike maybe only 30 miles. So in the thing is in the details. So if you look at bikes, many times they look very similar, just at the picture or at the screen. Every bike basically looks good today, but then if you look close, have a closer look at it, and if you test ride it and you actually touch the bike and feel it, then you will see the big difference in quality and price.
So you and I have talked before this, and I've been getting on my news feed these announcements of these low-end electric bikes. There's crowdfunding for these bikes that are $500 and $800, and they're getting these good reviews. But you know, I was talking to you about it. So there's got to be a compromise when you get a bike in that price range. I don't know if you want to make an observation about it. I know you don't sell anything in that price range.
I'm aware of most of the things that are going on in the market, and I also once in a while have to deal with it when customers come in and they give me a link to a certain website, or they come in with brochures. And well, let's face it, it's not only bicycles or electric bikes. Every product, with maybe some exceptions, if it is more expensive, it's just the better quality. There is no way around it. If you go lower in price, nobody manufactures something with not thinking to make any money on it. So if a manufacturer makes an electric bike, let's say for $800, he will have to downgrade in a certain way. There is no other way. Either it has a lack of equipment, and then you still have maybe a good bike, which I personally would prefer, or you look at the bike that looks like it has everything, and then you should be very suspicious.
Right. So tell me a little bit, who's buying e-bikes, and what are the needs that your average person that walks into your shop? Why are they buying an e-bike? What are they using it for?
That's very funny from my point of view, because since I was into that in Switzerland, I see that most people today use e-bikes in Switzerland not only for fun, but mainly for commuting, for short distance transportation. For some, it's even like some family dads sell their second car and commute with the bike to save all the money on gasoline and insurance or whatsoever. Now here, to answer your question, it's a little bit like it was in Switzerland in the beginning. More retired people buy actually these bikes because it doesn't matter for what you use these bikes or what's the purpose to use it. Ride these bikes is always fun. And that's basically my main customer. They buy it because it's a lot of fun, but then also because if you get older, you might run into some issues. Some, I don't know, knee surgery, or they have something with their back, the short breath. I can remember many customers, like one that used to go on a ride with his wife, and then she started to be not as fit as he anymore, and they lost a certain quality in their life to go together on rides. So he bought that e-bike in my place for his wife, and now they can go at the same pace, and both are happy to go back together on a ride. And talking about go back together on a ride, I had an athlete here, a former athlete, a girl. She was very athletic, and she was qualified for some, I wouldn't say she was qualified for the Olympics, but she was a very good athlete. And she had these health issues and could not even go riding with her friends anymore on tours. Now she come to my shop, she does a test ride on a nice torque sensor bike, and when she come back, she had tears in her eyes because she could go again back with her friends and had that quality back in her life. So with e-bike, it's not only about whether you can ride an e-bike or not, or whether you think you're already there, or you're still way too fit to do it. It's also about maybe some people in your environment having back their quality in life, or go together with you on rides, or have back some freedom that they missed because they couldn't ride a regular bike anymore.
So what is, like, someone comes into your shop, they understand e-bike is there, maybe it's something they could use, and they ride it for the first time. What's their average reaction?
That can be described simply. Basically, everybody who comes from a test ride has a smile from here to here over the whole face. That's what basically people have. And then you hear things like, oh, that's amazing, or I feel like young again, or stuff like this.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you made the comment to me, what is it about test rides? You don't sell bikes?
Yeah, I say that many times, and it's actually like that. You can talk about e-bikes for 2 hours, and you can do your research online or whatsoever. But if you ride one, that's the moment. It is just like everybody had it. Even I had it the first time more than 10 years ago. I was on a fair and someone offered me a test ride on an e-bike, and I go on that e-bike and it made snap, and I was into e-bikes.
I think the bottom line is, if you ride an e-bike, you're going to want one. I mean, that's
yeah.
It's fine, and
you'll
find why you need it. Right.
If you ride an e-bike, it might you might not want to miss it anymore.
Right. So I think I want to thank Phil for joining us today. Again, Phil's in Punta Gorda. He's very knowledgeable, as you can tell. I would urge you to drop by his shop, get a smoothie while you're there, take a test drive. I think, Phil, you're offering a free test ride right now. Is that correct? Anybody
Absolutely.
wants to come to the shop?
Absolutely. My business is family owned. It's not only a business, it's also partly a mission. And many people come back to our shop because of that it is unique, and that you have this family run store quality of service. So
right. Yeah, I can dig it. So thank you so much for joining us today. I got one piece of business to take care of. Last time we did a program on the best headlights, and people entered for a chance to win a headlight, and I'm going to draw the name of the winner of that right now here on the program. Let's see here. Mike Martin. So Mike, we will reach out to you, and we have this City Rover lights out of the box, but I'll send you the City Rover. I've tested this bike light. It's fantastic. Want to thank you all for joining us today. Next week, I interview Mark Schieffer, and Mark is the president of Gulf Coast Velo. It's a new bike club. They've got about 80 members, but they're growing and expanding, and they've got some very unique things. They do a women's only ride, and they really are drawing from Lakewood Ranch down to Venice Inglewood. So join us next time for Mark Schieffer. He's an engaging guy. This is an interesting club. You don't have to belong just to one club. You know, these clubs fit a lot of niches. So again, thank you, Phil, and thank you all for joining us. This is Jim Dodson, the Florida Bike Guy, signing off. Be safe out there. See you on the road.